I'm Dr. Jasmine Therese Esguerra, mother of 3 amazing daughters, and learned Hilot from my grandmother. She and my grandfather were orphaned in World War II. They grew up in Taal, Batangas, as far as I understand, and they fell in love and had 16 kids. My mom was technically, my understanding again, is it was the most sick. She had epilepsy. You know, they're in a province and she's having these grand mal seizures. So she would pray and she would massage my mom, and then she would work on the other kids. And I think that's how her skill grew, which is why I'm so passionate about teaching mothers and empowering mothers, because my grandmother didn't have more than a 3rd grade education. And she was powerful. She was the primary caregiver for her 16 kids and for us grandkids. I was the first American-born grandchild for both my mom's side and my father's side. And I was born in San Francisco, so I was with my grandmother a lot while my mother and father were developing their careers. It was really intimidating to think that I would be fulfilling her shoes or stepping in her path and doing the Hilot work. And I had to be strengthened in my faith to handle that. I had to face my demons and my shadows. I feel because of the trusted nature of Hilot, I saw a lot of cancer. You hear, just naturally as a caregiver, you know, you hear the pain and the suffering and the stories associated with some of the ailments, right? So feel how you're soft right in here, and then there's tension in here.
Yeah.
So I would just turn this way, take a breath. So moving into Hilot, first I want to talk about what I thought was interesting is I told you how my mom was epileptic, and she started having grand mal seizures at 12. And on my graduation day from chiropractic school, I was working on her, and she just remembered, she said, wow, she said, I fell down multiple flights of metal steps at 4 years old. And I hit my head over and over and over again. And then she said, that's why I started having grand mal seizures. And she had that memory come back. What I feel is the biggest and most beautiful part about bringing Hilot back and bringing body wisdom back is what I've learned is that our mind is literally like a magnifying glass, and our body wisdom is so much more vast. They say that, and our soul even bigger, right? So literally our mind can handle, I had read this and heard this, 40 bits of information per second, like 40. And you think that's a lot for a second, right? But our body, 40 million. Our soul, 2 billion. And a soul moment is when you just, it's like those pristine moments where you just have like all this wisdom flowing through. Like, I know I'm going to be a chiropractor, or I know I'm marrying him, or I'm supposed to live here. So much information flows in all at the same time. And those are the windows that we facilitate as Hilots for in healing. I knew something was different when, instead of in the past with chiropractic, I would literally see like my fingertips contacting somebody at a certain place, like this finger or this finger, like specific fingertips, and touching specific bones or whatnot. And then all of a sudden I had this desire to use my whole hand and use oil. So with the coconut oil, what's awesome about the coconut oil is it turns out that it's one of the best things for calming down the nervous system. It's cooling. So when you use it on the muscles, it pulls acidity and it pulls toxicity out of the muscles, pulls heat. And literally when I used oil, it was like with these windows, it was like cleaning a window. And then I could feel so much. I was so aware. It was like being one with that person. So I had to be very careful about who I worked with, because all of a sudden you're literally like breathing in the same breath. Your hearts are beating together at the same time. Whatever trauma they're going through. I mean, I would see some of this, and I had such a strong desire to help, because if it meant walking through a threshold and pulling somebody out, I wanted to do that. And it's such an interdimensional thing. I was at this spiritual retreat for certification. I came across this man who said, you know, you're a healer. And he stood up and he said, where are you from? And then I told him, well, my lineage is Filipino. And he said, I knew it. He said, when you walked into the room, he said, there's something about you guys. And then when I was at this seminar, I met this other gentleman, and he said, you know, you're from the Philippines, and you are from this healing lineage. And he said, you know, he said that both of his parents were renowned vibrational healers. And they would travel the world and teach about vibrational healing. And then he said, but we would take busloads of people to the Philippines. And he said that his parents told him, everywhere else we teach, but in the Philippines, we learn. And like these muscles, you use them a lot. Like, so you're a communicator, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we say hilot, I use that term really loosely because I mean, yes, there's like the really, you know, stripping of the muscle, which is very similar to Rolfing. They call it Rolfing, right? Very similar to Rolfing. So there's a theory that we have these energetic fields, and like right over the skin is your chi field, right? So you can feel that electricity, that's your chi. And then above is your emotional field. Like when you're really close to somebody, like when you're like this, kissy, right? That's your emotional field. And then out from that, it's mental, and then upper mental, and then outer side is soul. And so the theory there is that the opposite of that, the mirror image, goes inward. So you push a little bit and you're in chi, and then you go deeper, you're emotional, and you go really, really, really deep as you can go to the bone, that's soul. So that's what a hilot, like traditional helots, actually strip. We're stripping on a soul level. And we're not afraid to touch, like push right against the bone and strip a lot of that. And that's why people are like, it's painful or it hurts. It doesn't have to be like that. As a hilot, I just feel that it's very sacred work. It's very spiritual work. It's definitely a huge gift of our culture. And there's this whole language of touch and honoring and reading the spirit that it's very important to pass that on. My mom recently spoke to me after coming back from the Philippines and shared that I have cousins who make fun of me because, you know, why am I speaking so highly of hilot? It's so primitive. And at first I was hurt, but I thought if they honored it or wanted to learn it, they would have a different perspective. But I just feel, and there are other times too, that if somebody would say, Jasmine has Lola's touch, and if I could pass it on to other moms and women, there's a science backing this heart math where you're ultra aware and you become ultra aware of your environment. And that's why I think it's so important to bring hilot home and teach the people who want to learn hilot, because our love heals. You know, the whole part, what I feel in people who are injured is they have an area that's isolated. So they say like the difference between illness and wellness is the difference between I and we. So there can be differentiation and separation in the body too. Like this liver, or you know, this kidney has cancer, you know, so it starts to wall itself off, and then the body starts to wall itself off, where if the extra energy could move, then you'd have a healthy system. And with a hilot at home or at home, you already have proximity, you already have trust, you already love the people in your home. I was so lucky that whenever I felt sick, Lola was right there. She was already holding me. And she could do something with her hands. So she healed so many fevers and so many stomach aches and helped people with cancer and helped all these things from home with less than a third grade education. So as much as I appreciate my education, like we have to let the moms and the families know that they can be doing things at home. I guess more specifically, back to the Philippine martial arts, like I shared, when you take a punch to the body, or a muscle takes a punch to the body, then instead of being smooth muscle, it's like overlapped, like nappy hair, right? So, or like toothpicks on the floor. So combing through that with your thumb, right, or your whole hand, right, can be painful. Our job is to comb through that. That's often what we do. The thing about the FMA fighters is that your posture will show me like what you've been doing a lot. So, however, if their muscles, and maybe they're muscles like this, right? And then you feel all the muscles are really strong this way. So it's showing me that they're doing this a lot. So I do the opposite and bring it this way. And then all of a sudden there's a lot of blood flow back to the heart, there's a release, and then they have the full range of motion again because we just unwound that all. So that's why I think it's so beautiful to be learning the Philippine martial arts with the healing arts, because we're meant to be healing each other. We're meant to balance that out. And then this is the male third eye. And then the female is right here. So what I've taught people in school is just to tip right here. And then it takes you out of survival. And it's almost like a connection between the male and the female. And then what happens is as you tip like that, because when you're about to fight or you're in defense mode, your first thing is like, we're going to fight. So your first thing is like, and your whole energy is like, go forward. So the opposite is like, just take it back, right? So it's important, like, just like Bruce Lee talks about, like when he punches, right? It's like, it's a pullback that helps you go far, right? If you didn't pull back, if you didn't have a soft muscle, you can't just stay in a punch mode all the time and expect to have much power. So it's a pullback that has the power. So it's a rest that gives you the power to go the next day. And it's being able to reset your muscles and reset your neurology. And like the evolved masters, they develop their higher mind through meditation, through prayer. Why? Because like if you're just in survival, what happens is if somebody's just in survival, and I'm pointing to the survival part of the brain, then it actually limits your range of motion. It limits, you've got it down like really good, but like if somebody takes you out of your range, you might miss it. That's why they say don't fight angry, right? So if somebody's just in survival, then they have a narrowed visual field, they have a narrow auditory field, and they have a narrow perception, right? And it's great for survival. It's just, the mid-mind is all about the rules. Like if you're truly in survival, you're like, screw the rules, right? Everybody else is following the rules. That's the last thing I need to do because that's where everybody's going when you're in survival. And then the higher mind is all about, it comes up with something, with new things. You see other things. It's like in those fighting or the war movies where like you can be in mortal combat, right? One-on-one. And then but somebody coming from a helicopter is going to see something totally different, right? Somebody creating maps is going to see something totally different. Somebody like panning out even further is going to see different things. So as you go into the higher mind, you're going into a higher perspective as a fighter. And what I love about the Philippine martial artists is that they just inherently are humbled, because it was never just, nobody gets away with always hitting and never being hit. Just that there's that humility, and I just have so much love for my brothers, because I could feel that code of honor with them. And I know, to deliver a punch, like a fully empowered punch, right? You're connected. Like you're really like moving energy that's bigger than you. So my training kind of automatically felt where he was hot. Mm-hmm. So what I'm doing, so to take somebody from defense or fighting, right, martial arts to healing, it's literally taking somebody from the defensive brain to the higher brain. And you can't do both. Like if you're in defense mode, you're not thinking, I love you and I love the world and let's make dinner, right? Or what kind of art can I create today? It's so literally there's a switch that happens in the head. And I feel like literally like there's there's survival mind, there's midbrain, which is our brilliance, like right where you wear glasses, that's our brilliance. And then above is, that's why you look up to pray, you look up for inspiration, you look up for new information. So this higher brain is what's accessed when you go from survival to a martial art, like arts. Yeah, it's so much bigger. It's important that it's so much bigger than the survival mind. You know, what I learned in chiropractic, the philosophy of chiropractic is our job is to connect man the spiritual with man the physical. So the medium in there is the mind and our perception. So there's a big difference between, you can have somebody who is seasoned, has been through a million fights, and they're going to have a different perception than the person who's going in for the first time, right? And just seeing these things like is so important because you can train somebody to win just like you can train somebody to lose, right? And that's why an evolved and a master fighter is going to master their spirit. They will have a force field, an energetic field around them that is so aware that, I mean, you can't help it. When you master your field, you're going to know. That's that higher mind evolution. You know what they're thinking, and that's why you block it. This is that higher wisdom of accessing body wisdom that gets 40 million bits of information or 2 billion bits of information instead of 40. So, and as far as like building that field, building that chi, eating foods that are living, eating foods that bring your energy, like you'll know because you'll have a brightness in your eyes. You'll feel more alive. So testing that, like you eat something, then look in the mirror, like, did that make me shiny? Did that make me brighter? Or do I feel tired after eating this? Do I feel crazy after eating this? Your body is going to talk to you, and it's so important that you listen and that you honor what your body tells you as far as wisdom, because the last thing you need is personal physical betrayal.